Hi. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Chu, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here at the TEDx for GIIS. So just want to kick things started with the topic that I'll be sharing today. So I'll be talking about the art of doing today, and as you can tell, some things need to be done. And I want to really rewind back to 2007. All right, it's a long time ago, and I think some of you here may not even have been born in 2007. Can I get a show of hands? Who was born in 2007? Who was born after 2007? Raise of hands. Okay, quite a lot of you. Wow. Okay, so this predates you, yes? Talking a bit of history right now. So in 2007, something very interesting came out, right? So this is a book. And the book is called The Mountain Lion. It's part of a series of books in the school's library, in the primary school's library. So back then, I was about primary 5, so about 10, 11 years old. And there was a huge assembly, a school assembly, where 5 students were nominated to go up on stage, just like today, and to talk about books that they have read. Right? So I chose this book called The Mountain Lion, and I prepared for about 3 weeks for that particular sharing session. So the next slide shows you how the school hall looks like. It's a very big hall. You've got everyone from the primary 1s all the way to the primary 6s, all the teachers there, the principal is there. But when the time came for me to go up on stage, right, just about 5 minutes before that, I backed out. I told the teacher in charge, can I not do it? He looked at me and he kept quiet for a moment. And then he just asked me to go away. He was like, go, right? So this etched really deeply in my mind because this particular incident was a turning point in how I had prepared for something and not done something. Right? So as you can see in the next slide, there was this fear of failure, right? So whenever we think of the art of doing something, we also think about what holds us back. And I guess this primary introductory story shows you that the fear of failure, my fear of being laughed at by my classmates when I had heard other people doing wonderful sharings over the storybooks that they had read and what they had learned, my fear of not being able to match them led to me pulling back. And this is just one of 3 reasons that hold us back when we think of doing something, when we think of taking action. The second thing that I want to talk about brings us to 2020. So we're going to time travel back to 5 years from now. All of you who have been born, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant time because we've got this friend of ours here, right? COVID-19. And if all of you remember, you would remember the days when we couldn't travel freely. If you see on this slide right here, what you can see is that this woman is wearing a mask, and more importantly, the schedules behind her are much shorter, right? The whole board isn't filled up. That's because we had lots of travel restrictions. And this brings me to my second story for today on what holds us back from taking action, right? So around the time of COVID-19 in 2020, I was already in university and I had an entrepreneurial streak in me. I knew I wanted to start something, and COVID-19 seemed like, well, the opportune time for me to do something that could change the world. So this idea of having a system, a platform, something that could really integrate all of the travel restrictions into a single site for information to be delivered around the world was planted sometime around February, March 2020, when the lockdowns were just starting to begin, when folks were starting to face increasingly stringent and an increasing number of travel restrictions. So this gave birth to something called Project Flux, right, which was this all-in-one kind of travel platform for us to really, well, get information and be able to travel better. But guess what? Project Flux this particular site was only launched in November 2021. That was almost a good 20 to 21 months after I had ideated. So what was then holding me back? The fear of not just failure, but the fear of not getting things perfect. So the second thing that really holds us back from making that impact, right, from the art of doing, would be perfectionism, right? Because in this second story, it wasn't really the fear of, well, getting laughed at by people. I would just be at home and people would be in their homes. Even if people laughed at me, I wouldn't know. But what I really feared was not getting it 100% right. And that's why even though I had worked on the platform, I had gotten friends to give me feedback on the platform, I didn't launch it immediately. I waited until almost the tail end of, well, the COVID-19 travel restrictions before I launched it in a state of desperation. But what is the last and final thing that may hinder us? Say you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I don't really fear anything and I'm not a perfectionist. But why does it feel that sometimes I still don't take action? And this brings us to today, 2025. In fact, just a couple of days ago, when I got this particular message, right? So a dear friend of ours, I think someone who you might know as well, Shriyansh, reached out to me on LinkedIn. So he says that he had met me, sort of, in different conference when I was one of the panelists when I was doing a sharing. And he invited me to give this particular TED Talk that you're hearing right now. So if you notice, this message was sent on the 11th of September, right? So that's almost about a month ago, right? Close to a month ago. And what really happened is that this picture, which was taken about 2 days ago on Saturday during the dry run, showed me being incredibly unprepared. I had no script. I had asked a person to take a photo of me with just this TEDx background because I had no slides. And I was just going on and on mumbling for about a couple of minutes. So why didn't I do anything? Why didn't I prepare? Why did I leave it to, well, yesterday for me to get my slides and this whole story together? And this is something that I've kind of learned throughout my journey. The third thing that sometimes holds people back, including myself, would be the hesitation to begin. The thinking to ourselves that there is that perfect time for us to get anything done, right? That there is that magical moment that as long as we do that, at that time, everything will be good. So sometimes we tend to wait for that, well, perfect moment to arrive, and it doesn't ever happen. But I want to share with you more than, well, what holds us back, right? Because I want to share with you what the opposite would look like, what the alternative would be. What if I had done something differently? And in fact, even though I'm a master of procrastination and, well, a person who dilly-dallies and delays things to the last minute, there was actually once, just, well, one big moment in which I did something different. And this brings us back, really, to a time when most of you were born in 2009. So some good 16 years ago. And this was me then. You see, it looks about the same, right? A lot of people say I actually look younger right now. But besides the point, so that's me in 2008, 2009. And to prove to you that it's actually then, if you look at the background, you see the flamingos in the old bird park. So if you go to the new bird park, you won't be able to take this photo because it simply doesn't exist, this particular kind of scenery. And what's happening in 2009 was something very significant because it was the first time that I would learn computer coding in my life. I started with C++. And one of the very interesting things that happened was that my school teacher, who was very fond of computer science, who is a techno-optimist, kept on going on and on and on and on and on about the positive impact of technology on the world. And one thing that really struck me was that my teacher had claimed that technology would solve all the problems of the environment. That wasn't something I necessarily agreed with. And so I asked the question immediately. I raised my hand, and instead of dilly-dallying, I asked my teacher, what if technology could harm the environment? This, by the way, was and still is a very contrarian point of view. There are more people who think that technology can harm the environment, but back in 2009, mainstream media, the general mantra by both government and folks who supply such equipment and software was that technology would be good. We should get onto the internet. We must digitize. But I was thinking to myself, well, what if technology could cause more harm to the environment than good? And so I went onto Yahoo. People still weren't using Google back then, at least not as much. So I went on Yahoo, and this is how Yahoo looked like in 2009. Right? I actually went to the Internet Archives to take this particular picture. And I went on Yahoo and I typed in, well, technology harming the environment. Right? So just a couple of simple words. And lo and behold, I found that technology could actually cause more harm to the environment than good if used wrongly. And this really led me down the line of starting GRIINIWeb, which is a startup, a company that I have been working on for the past many years, right? We're very proud to be the first in Asia to actually measure how much CO2 comes out from a line of computer code simply because I chose to act on it, simply because I chose to raise my hands and ask that question, simply because I chose to, well, do the research, right, to look into this deeply. And it's something that I wanted to share, not to, well, humble brag or to brag about what we did, but to really show you how just by taking action, even if the world thinks it's impossible or thinks differently, how it can lead to something substantial. So GRIINIWeb, right, well, me taking action at that time led to me being featured on the news, in the radio, on live television, in magazines. And it goes on and on, right? I've been having the opportunity to speak at places like the UN, right? At places like the Arab League, which you can see on the far right of the screen. And it also brought me to many places that I would have never dreamed of, right? Even FedEx one day featured what I'd done. And so these are just some of the photos that show what can happen if you decide to just take that one step forward and decide to, well, for once, take action, right? So this is very interesting because this is closer to home, and this was earlier this year. On the right-hand side, I had been most fortunate to give the opening keynote at the Sastra's Future City Summit in IIT Madras earlier this year in Chennai, and I was then featured on the Hindu's front page on the day after. Essentially, what that one action led to was also the nonprofit, which is the Global Alliance for Digital Sustainability, whereby we teach low-carbon computer coding to more than 7,500 individuals across 23 countries till date, right? So if you want to ask me what I'm thinking of in retrospect, right? Well, what would I talk to little Ian in 2009? Well, I'll tell him, good job in raising your hand, in asking your teacher what technology could, well, be harming the environment with. But more than that, I would tell little Ian 3 things, right? Number 1, never fear failure, embrace failure. And it's often said that failure is the mother of success, and it's very true, because only when you failed, then you can learn and do even better. But more than that, right, I would also tell little Ian that perfectionism isn't necessary. In a sense, all of us are imperfectly perfect. We're perfect in our own ways, and that's enough. And the last thing is, never hesitate to begin, right? As a famous sports brand once said, just do it. So I want to leave you with a quote for today, and the quote is this, right? The biggest regret I've had, and the biggest regret I think many of you may have, is the regret of not doing, right? So I urge all of you today to take action, starting from, well, even right now, right? Because you never know when that may lead to something life-changing. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day ahead.